Very good afternoon, sir. On behalf of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we welcome you all for the exclusive webinar on industry best practices in managing GST function. We have with us today's distinguished speakers, Mr. Sandip Kasera, Director Tax InMobi Technology Services, and Mr. Gopi Krishna Obulam, Head of Tax and Legal, Arzooo. Thank you very much, sirs, for accepting our invitation to address at this session. The webinar is organized under the aegis of Indirect Tax Expert Committee, chaired by Mr. Badrinath, who is a partner of Singhvi, Dev and Unni, co-chaired by Mr. Arun Ramchandran from Tata Consumer Products and Mamata Anand from Deloitte Tohmatsu, India, mentored by Mr. P.V. Srinivasan of PVS Advisors. Today's webinar is moderated by Mr. Badrinath, Chair of Indirect Taxes Expert Committee. And on behalf of the Chamber, we express our sincere thanks to all the members for joining this session online. And now I would hand over the platform to Mr. Badrinath. Over to you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much. And yes, a very warm welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for agreeing to kind of share your thoughts today with all our members. To quickly give you an introduction of our speakers, Gopi Krishna Obulam. Yes, we've known each other for quite a few years now, all three of us. So Gopi Krishna Obulam, he works with Arzooo. He's the head of tax and legal, as Rupa was mentioning. His earlier stint includes Flipkart, JP Associates, Udan. That's where kind of we first connected, and Amar Raja Batteries. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Sandip, yes, Sandip is head of tax at InMobi, Director Tax. He's earlier being with KPMG, BW, and Deloitte. So I'm definitely, I take this as an opportunity, privilege to be actually moderating the session to understand the best practices in the industry. Thank you so much for agreeing to join us today. Just to set the theme, we have finished 6 years of GST. So we are now no longer that infant. So we are in the 7th year. We thought time is appropriate now to kind of understand what each one of us have gone through in the last 6 to 7 years in terms of the good, the bad, the peak, the trough, everything starting from 2017 till date. Procedures have changed, documentation have changed. The best practices, the good practices that were there, that were known to us during the pre-GST days have changed. The expectations have changed. The numbers have changed as far as how it impacts the P&L. Therefore, the criteria in the decision making, as far as the business decisions, also has changed to quite an extent. So we thought it is appropriate to kind of share and rather pose some questions to the two gentlemen sitting with me here and understand how they have gone about on various things. So let me talk as less as possible. So maybe from each of you, sir, to start with, if you can just give us maybe 2-3 minutes of your experience on what is your take on possibly on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as GST is concerned. Gopi first.
Well, first Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu. So when we implemented GST, or the GST has come into picture in our lives, right? There's a lot of work has happened in the government and the industry as well. So we struggled a lot, no doubt about it, to shift from the old regime to new regime. But this is not actually very possible without the help of the government and industry coming together. So first of all, I would like to thank the government for taking this up at a speed, right? Because we thought this wouldn't happen last 15 years back and 20 years back, but the day has come and now it is 7th year or 8th year now we are running at. That's really a wonderful and amazing game. While I was actually in Flipkart at that point in time, I was taking care of the complete GST implementation projects, including Jabang, Myntra, Instacart, whatsoever the companies there were. It was a brilliant show, per se. Though there were hiccups, the government has come up with some shortages because it's a very vast system. Just think about ourselves, right? For a company, we want to implement a GST at that point in time, it was humongous task by itself. The government has to think about the many industries, many perspectives, many use cases. It's a very big task for the government as well. So first of all, we should thank the government for bringing that kind of a GST for us. Today we have hiccups, but we can possibly solve them out, right? Looking at the perspective, the way we thought GST versus what the GST we have today, it is at 80-85% level. So if you ask me the rating on the scale of 10, it is 8.5.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's nice. Sandeep.
Yeah. So for me, if you ask me to rate it, I would not be able to rate it in the scale of 1 to 10, but I would say it's a kind of a mixed bag. Uh, yes, we are not infants, but we're not matured as well. So we are somewhere in between. What I believe is that though yes, the agenda of the government was to say that okay, this is one kind of a one tax for one nation, wherein you would a supplier supplying anything, there will be an input for you. There will be an easy flow of the input to you. But yes, the way today the provisions are there or the litigations which we are looking at, it's not that easy. But yes, it's a big step forward towards a global economy as well. And I believe that going forward, as and when these provisions are progressing, we will reach to a stage where we are matured enough to absorb what is there in the act. So I would again say it's a mixed bag for me so far as the GST is concerned.
True. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was nice. Thank you. Yes, I relate to what you say. It's a mixed bag. I mean, there are quite a few challenges, no doubt. But yes, just maybe if it matters, I think the government is listening to us. That is what makes a lot of difference when we are introducing something as dramatic as GST. Thank you. From a best practice point of view, getting back to kind of what the discussion is going to be all about today. If I say industry best practices, I think one of the single largest thing that concerns us, kind of bites us every day, is input tax credit. It's more like the way the records have to be maintained has changed, accounting has changed, the impact on P&L is constant thing. So Sandeep, what is your take in terms of the documentation? Because there are quite a few things, if I should say, just to count, not to scare, but there are more than 18 conditions that I have to satisfy to be able to take a credit of a single rupee that comes in one invoice for me. So what has your experience been? Is there any recommendation from your side?
So yeah, that's a very valid point, and I think these conditions are something which is very onerous on the buyer. So it is like again a caveat emptor, let the buyer be beware. So that kind of a situation where yes, even for a buyer, he has to go back and see that whether or the onus still lies with the buyer to see whether a right GST output has been paid by the supplier or not. If the output has not been paid and yet you have discharged that liability, but you're not able to take that input tax credit. So in my view, there are certain things which we internally also believe that should be implemented. Is one, whenever you are having a negotiation with your buyer or your supplier, put a condition that okay, but the payments will only be made to you once the input credit is available in the 2B. I am able to visualize this. I am able to look into it. I am able to take a credit. Then only I pay off that amount. Second is maybe create a vendor rating system, kind of a matrix where vendor A is someone who regularly files their GST return. You don't have any issues on that. All the times you get that input credit. When vendor B, who is somewhere in the middle, sometimes it falters, sometimes it's not. And vendor C are somewhere who are always a kind of a non-filers. So try to push them from C to B and B to A. And if the vendor C is not moving from C to B, then maybe look out for some alternate vendors and not stick with them. Because again, for a business, ITC is no lesser than a cash.
Correct.
And it is like everyone plans about the cash for their own well-being. For the organization also, you need to plan that cash. So that is where I think this vendor rating system and a negotiation with the vendors on the availment of ITC when it is appearing in 2B is very critical and should be something which can be thought about.
True, very true. I mean, that was nice. Just to there is one provision called compliance rating system. There is a discussion which has started on the other side of the table, which is the tax office. So hopefully we see some light on that. Gopi, on the same topic, would
Yeah.
you recommend something on, how to manage the documentation piece, the kind of accounting, the kind of the complexity, or I don't know if it is as complex, but we make it complex for ourselves on how the reconciliations are prepared, something on that.
No, I think, Badri, what happens here is it's quite unfortunate in the industry. A tax man is only responsible for compliances. That's the biggest concern. It's very unfortunate, but it is so. What my take on this is, as an industry, right? A tax manager is responsible for reporting the complaints, not taking care of the complaints.
Well said.
Right? So a taxman responsibility also is to ensure that how do you educate the entire office or entire organization as a whole that hey, every seat is responsible for making complaints. And our department or the tax department for that matter in the organization is supposed to report that complaints, what they're complied with. If you don't actually at the urgent point, comply with the regulations, I can't exhibit the report as compliant. So the mindset of the people in the organization have to definitely go for a change. Starting from the promoter level, the fag end of the person who keeps the invoice recording has to absolutely go for a change. Now, I've seen in every industry, complaints, responsibility of tax person. Absolutely not. Every seat has the complaints responsibility.
True.
And unless they comply, let us say, as rightly pointed out, these mechanism of star rating, the point is keeping that aside. What is the vendor onboarding system we have today? Do we have that or not is important.
Very well.
We want to buy something and there's a PO generated or a PR coming from some XYZ indenter, and we just rush up to raise a PO because it's very important, urgent from yes, there is a call from CEO. You have to meet the requirement and produce the goods, right? That's the fastness. Absolutely agree the fastness with some kind of a systematic approach. So have this vendor onboarding system proper. See that how it will be useful for your life cycle of the entire management. For example, say if the industry says, hey, I have the profitability in this venture or the business, and I will go for that. I am going to lose my credit of 18%, 28%. How does it going to help? You are going to work on the 5% profit. I am making the losing of 28%, 18% whatsoever. So nobody is construing tax as integral part of the business. It's going to become very incidental. So our call out is today is don't consider this as incidental part. It is integral part. That makes a lot of difference.
So some maybe bullets from both of you maybe on this. How do I tell this to my management? Saying, look, I'm not a compliance guy. I have something more to do.
Absolutely. See, what I've started my journey with, right? Obviously, you are right. The moment you go, hey, I want to report the compliance, but you have to do the compliance, there will be definitely hit back. Right? So
Possibly.
People have to follow three things, which in my life, I started doing it, right? What, how, and when. What you have to communicate is very important, which but how you have to communicate is important. You can't just go and say, hey, the responsibility of tax manager is just, report compliance. I don't do anything beyond that. And when is important. If he's rushing for some meeting, you just go and say, my responsibility is come down to this level. My salary is the same thing. And nobody will agree to that, right? So we'll have to think through what is to be communicated, how it has to be communicated, and then when it has to be communicated, which I've been doing it. So the day when I started my journey to communicate this, there was a lot of hesitation, but I never did go to the management directly. The first stroke, I started dealing with my business people around who are my business people, educate them. First important thing is the foremost thing, education. So you'll have to see, fortunately, unfortunately, today, every person in the company or office behaves that they know everything in GST. Why? Because GST has been implemented while everybody are on the same page. If you go and say, I'm tax expert, listen to me, nobody will listen to you. In VAT and other scenarios, when you are going to say that, I'm expert in this, they will believe you. Now, hey, GST, I also know. Now, the one step down a tax person has to do is, you should stop your bureaucratic approach. We were bureaucratic. Let's admit that fact first. As a tax person, as a tax manager, hey, this can't be done. Let's not go to that road. If this can't be done, what else you can provide as an alternate is important. The moment you want to say no, you also have to give an alternate step towards it and be with the business, help them out. So they are with you. Then you start educating them. Once you start educating them, they realize the value of it. Hey, you are going to earn me 5%. There is a possible loss of 15, 18, 25%, 28%, whatsoever the tax rates are. And then please look at this. Now, it's very important for you. Otherwise, your P&L will never look like beautiful as the way you think. So the education is very important. So what, when, and how, and education to business is important. Then you go to the top. Hey, I've educated around teams, and these are all the people to comply with this. Every person has a responsibility. Now you start taking up a leadership team and go to the leadership team. Hey, I've educated your, all your people around. Now on a monthly basis, you have to certify this is compliant, which we did so far. Right? So what happens over there is the first there is hesitation. The second, they start hearing you, not listening you. Then the third step, you have to again make it. They will listen you. The fourth thing, things will start falling in place. The moment it starts falling in place, don't lose the patience. Hey, it's not coming up next day, 1 day, 2 days. It's a matter of 6 months continuous journey around it. The moment you do so, you are done with it. And especially for this, you need to have the robust processes around. I know a 1,000 crores company ke liye process easy hota hai. If it's a 500 crores company, process is not easy because you have to think of the bandwidth and things like it. But very simple processes are enough to deal with the problem. That's what my take is.
All right. Just on the same point, Sandip, coming back to you, would you suggest, what do you think should be as a practice, as a procedure, when I'm issuing a purchase order, when I'm interacting with my vendors, because that's a very large concern to me. Something on those lines.
So correct. So I'll take you from Gopi itself. See, educating not only the management, but right from the person who is putting that invoice into the system or creating that PO, having a conversation or honest dialogue with the vendor, saying that, okay, we are agreeing for this PO, but the GST portion will only be released that once I get a 2B certification or the 2B reconciliation that your credit is flowing to me. That's the only time when I pay you, and maybe asking for a declaration that, okay, if there is any penalty or there is any loss to that effect, that is recoverable from a subsequent invoice of yours. And so that your P&L doesn't get that impact of 18% or a 28% in that. Second is obviously one is education. Second is the flow, the way you communicate to the people, because everybody today is short of bandwidth. Everybody has their regular work to do. On the top of it, as a tax manager, if you go and tell, okay, you need to also satisfy these 5 conditions before you post a entry in the ERP system, obviously there will be resistance because nobody likes a change. But how do you communicate again? And you need to show them the picture that, okay, this is how your company is getting impacted. Once you show that picture to them, maybe again, it's a process, not within a month, but maybe 6 months or a year, where they will start realizing that what is the quantum, and you'll have to deal with quantums. By just saying that, okay, we are having a loss of 18%, nobody agrees to it unless and until you project that quantum of loss which you have actually incurred because of non-getting of the ITC. That is where I think people will realize, okay, this is a huge quantum, and even for management, that brings up is kind of an eye opener for them as well. That, okay, because of IST, I've lost some, say, 20-30 crores. So that is something which I believe that educating and bringing it at the right moment, which Gopi said, is very critical for an organization.
I'll just add one more point here. Sure. In accounting perspective, what we have been doing also after GST has come in. See, I cautiously want to use the word after availing and before utilization, retain. It is very important. So you can avail, but you can't utilize it unless it is right one. So retention is next step. So what we need to look at that way is the moment any bill is booked by the accountant, it is only to be parked in suspense account. You have to open another account called availment account. Once, example, say this entry must have been in 2B record. The only when you see this entry in 2B, you push this from suspense account to availment account.
All right.
Then what happens? This control account of suspense account will always have some kind of a number which is never been into your 2B at all.
Correct.
Right? So there is a possible control to follow. Now today what is happening? The entire thing is put into one particular code, and when it is done, you just utilize it. So what happens? You never know what is your real retention money available versus the availment.
Correct.
So create two different accounts. One is a suspense account where they let the accountant post all the entries. Whenever he could certify that it is part of 2B or the conditions are met, rather for that matter, push this from suspend to the availment account. So it's a clean availment. The other one, suspense account, is always having your number where either the business or finance has to follow.
True.
There I would like to bifurcate. Again, it's not reduction in the job profile of the tax manager. He has to ensure that the accountant is doing the right job by pushing this right credit to your availment account, so that you can always go back to him. Hey, what happened to this number?
True.
How you will follow up and get the vendors done for this? Otherwise, there is every possibility that you can stop this amount being paid, as you rightly pointed out. Put in the contract a condition that if you don't pay, if you don't actually upload your invoices into 1, not affected in 2B, this is a timeline. If you're not doing that, I'm going to reverse it and I'm going to pay you. That's all. Simple.
Okay. In the same breath, how easy has it been to both of you to say that, look, if it's not appearing in my 2B, I'm not going to release the payment to that amount, to that account, to that extent? How easy has it been? I mean, in managing that, that condition?
Yeah. So definitely it is not easy, but it's again education. It is not that, let's say I give an example, right? When on the motorcycle, if somebody is going with a license, it does not want, the government wanted to levy penalty on you, impose penalty on you. It is want to bring a discipline. So how you want to educate your vendor was, if you are not going to do this activity, I'm going to stop your payment, is not actually imposition of penalty for that matter. It is to bring him a discipline. So our tone is something towards that, not to retain his payments by ensuring he's not uploading the invoices. It
Sure.
is towards let him come into the compliance track, let him be educated around it. Look at him, 6 months, I'm giving you time. If you are not going to come into the line, you are thrown away. So that must be very indicative, right? So it is not that, hey, the first month you are not uploaded your invoice, so second month onwards I'm practicing without any say to you that I'm cutting your money. This doesn't work in a business, because somebody is monopolistic, you don't have the goods, otherwise you are, unfortunately in the e-commerce, especially if I were to speak about, as an e-commerce industry, they have to bend before the customer as well as seller as well. Because unless the seller and customer are there's no business can happen over there. So in your example of caveat emptor, so we have to bend before seller also. Both are the the gods for the e-commerce industry. So you can't play with around. But the only thing is the education in a manner that actually makes them to understand this is a compliance requirement. See, another angle to it is, if they don't comply with this, you are not the only one who's going to suffer. He's going to suffer. Ultimately, the government is going to come back, if not today, tomorrow. So we have to have an education around it that really solves the problem, is my view, which we really solved some of the matters in that manner. Yeah.
So yeah, correct. So obviously, as he rightly pointed out, it's not easy. Even going back to a supplier as saying that, okay, we're doing stop business with you. It's not going to be easy. But yes, as I said at the very start, that there has to be a vendor rating system. You cannot just blindly follow that vendor, even if he's not complying with it. You'll have to find some alternative. So if it would have been my business, yes, I would have got some alternative. So be that, okay, if it's some other's business as well, I'll find an alternative to see that, okay, wherever the vendor is not complying on a go forward basis, I try to look for any alternatives.
All right. That's nice. That's nice. On the same point, maybe to Gopi, this one is, one of you mentioned saying, when we issue a purchase order, it starts there. I think you mentioned. A lot of times when I generate a purchase order, the procedures today have changed. In my purchase order as well, I indicate the HSN.
Yeah.
And at times, as a buyer, I insist that unless that HSN, rather in an ERP framework or maybe my own policy framework.
Yeah.
Unless the invoice that my supplier gives carries that HSN, I will not process it.
Okay.
But I believe that the supplier is a better judge to decide what the HSN has to be on that transaction. So something on that.
I know this is
basically the appropriateness of the HSN in the invoice.
See, this is a very big question to answer because it has its own repercussions, right? Industry is facing some problems, as you rightly point out, that the buyers are expecting to change HSN code from the seller perspective because the buyer expects that this is the right HSN. But we also have encountered these issues, in other occasions. But our stand is something like this, HSN is something like, it is a technical nature, first of all, to classification is concerned. Once a company as a supplier has decided, this is what is very prudent HSN for my particular product, there should not be any influence by the buyer. And unfortunately, sellers will sometimes tilt towards that. The reason being that rates might remain same, both proposed HSN versus the adopted HSN. But eventually, tomorrow, if HSN code rates are going to get changed, there will be a bigger problem.
Right.
So the moment a seller has verified, researched, and concluded this is my HSN I'm going to use, especially manufacturing, because in trading perspective, we don't see a lot of nonsense is happening around it. But from the manufacturing perspective, yes, the moment the manufacturer adopted a HSN, maybe the buyer is asking, I want a different HSN, because from there the supply chain starts. In supply chain, he wanted to have a reduced tax rate so that he can make something out of it or being competitive in the market. That's what the goal for him. But once the manufacturer has decided this is the HSN, by looking at the respective nomenclatures, respective philosophy around it, what is the content, what is the chemical that is going into the product, all this is being done with it by help of the biggest consultants like you, then there is no question of he tilting towards the buyer just because to process that order. But that does not stop it there, because he may be in a concern that I may lose this order. And if he goes to the management and say both rates are same, proposed versus the adopted, management will say, kya dikkat hai? Chhod do. Do it, kind of a thing. But as a tax manager, you should be in a position to appraise the management. If at all we're going to take a call on this to change the HSN, this would be the possible repercussion. Raise your hand. Unfortunately, today as a tax manager, what we do is whatever that comes from top, we wanted to follow, and business pressure will always be there. But what is the prudency? We stop looking at around. And urgency comes in, we will take the call, and then after that we will come to Badri or Mamta to say that please help me around, I've taken this call. Rather, we need to have that breathing time. Probably we need to set an SLA. That's what we do in our industry, that whenever people come and just like that on the go, you can discuss, but I need to have my own time to finalize and deliver the best output to you. You need to have SLAs around it. My take on this is, let us not go to change the HSN codes unless you are sure that we have done a mistake as an organization and this really goes for a change.
True.
If that is your intent, let us do that. Otherwise, there's no requirement.
On the same point, at least not in the e-commerce sector, but in the auto sector, auto components, there's a ruling by the Supreme Court last year in the case of Westinghouse, where they said, all auto components, all our parts are essentially a specific HSN,
Right,
which is apparently different from what the industry has adopted.
right.
Applying those adopted by the industry versus what the government is alleging now, the tax rate changes from 18 to 20.
Absolutely.
So it is coming from excise days now. I mean, the impact is right from excise days because of this ruling. And last year we have a circular also which has come. So in this breath, Sandip, to you, when there is a notice that comes, what do you kind of recommend as a good practice for me? I mean, what are the do's and don'ts when I get any form of communication from the tax office? Because out there are a lot of views. What would you recommend?
Before we go to that question, one question to you from my side is that on that same point on HSN, how much is the liability or how much is the onus on the buyer to verify the HSN of each and every invoice which his organization is getting? Because for an e-commerce industry, there will be multiple thousands of invoices every day.
True.
So to what extent is the onus on the buyer to verify the HSN?
So I take this way, right? It is not as a buyer he's questioning this. Possibly he is selling again the same product in the market.
That's
So
where it
from that
becomes-
perspective, he's concerned about it. I've seen a case where department has come across all the supply chain issuing notices in Nokia matter. It's a very
Correct.
good matter in Nokia matter. If we
The
can look at it, chargers in Karnataka, we have seen it is not about HSN per se for that matter. The classification again, when you look at it, the Karnataka VAT Act was containing, including sets.
Including such. Yeah.
Sets. But across the Karnataka state, we have received notices in this entire supply chain. Let us say, Nokia has sold these goods to, Flipkart India, Flipkart has sold WS Retail, XYZ, whatsoever. Everybody across supply chain got the notices.
True.
Now, the government is not very clear. Can I issue the notice to the fag end fellow who has done the ultimate value addition? Because unfortunately, the value addition is not a positive value addition. The negative value addition is value addition. So government is not clear. Where do I stop it? Has it been only positive value addition? They would have actually gone to the fag end of the story where the B2C shipment is going to be delivered. Now they are issuing notices to everyone. So the HSN code is concerned. It is not a buyer perspective that he's worried about as a buyer. When it has to be sold again, he will also issue notice if it is wrong. So that's where his concern is.
So just to answer your question, because you asked me, two things on this. One is definitely what Gopi mentioned. If I'm a consumer of what I purchase, then HSN really practically doesn't matter, because there is no onus on the buyer to say that this is the most appropriate HSN of what is purchased. But as he rightly said, if in the supply chain I'm a reseller of that, then to the extent of at the point of resale, onus comes to me, saying, have I applied the most appropriate HSN? The difference, of course, it stares, it is hanging on my head on that difference piece. But having said that, and going back to the previous question that we were talking about, where the vendor really doesn't pay, I use every opportunity to discuss this. So maybe it came up, so I'm just talking about this. We've all seen the concept of unjust enrichment in indirect taxes, which is excise, to an extent customs, service tax largely.
Section 11 of.
Yes, and now GST also, unjust enrichment. So now when the government says, look, the vendor has not paid, therefore I'm recovering from the recipient, as in the customer. Vendor has charged a wrong rate of tax, therefore I'm recovering from him. Either way, they are recovering from the recipient. The government, trust me, will initiate proceedings against the supplier too. So is it not getting unjustly enriched here? Because it is going to recover from two people. Correct. And to top it on, if when they recover it from the recipient, if it is 74, then he's not even eligible for credit. So that way, this question, I keep raising it whenever I get an opportunity with the tax office also. But yeah, the government has in one of the earlier occasions said that, look, we don't have a mechanism to track that. That doesn't mean you collect tax from two people. You don't have a mechanism. What can I do about it?
No, I have an answer for this,
All right.
Probably you may take it as right or wrong answer, but it's an answer. Right? Unjust enrichment is applicable only to the public.
Correct.
Not to the government.
Absolutely.
So if you are the recipient and you are using it for your own usage, whatever it is, as a company or whatever the person, it is definition is there's a person. For all those persons, the unjust enrichment is applicable. For the government,
right?
No unjust enrichment. They can get any money.
Sorry, I suppose we are deviating from the topic, but just for a minute. It is not just unjust enrichment which is applicable to me, but not the other side of the table. There are a few other concepts in the GST law which are applicable to me, but not the other side.
Yes,
like if I do something wrong in the process of my compliance, in the process of my reporting, the personal hearings or whatever, I don't want to call it misrepresentation, then yes, I am penalized. It is wrong against me. But if there is a mistake which is done by the other side, maybe interpretation, otherwise, they are insulated.
They are insulated. But again, in the execution of sovereign responsibilities as an executive, there is always a good faith argument comes into picture.
True.
I've dealt with that.
True.
I dealt with that in many occasions. I had a very similar approach towards it. Right. But unfortunately or fortunately, even under the anti-corruption law, today is a big debate in Andhra Pradesh. There is section 17 here, what the provision. It, that particular concept of being safe to the government officers, that is there. You can't help it because otherwise no officer can be in a position to pass an order.
No, correct. I agree with you. I fully agree with you. This is just so that, at large, we are able to just share this. I fully agree with you. On the HSN piece, the correspondence, we were on that correspondence.
Notices, yeah. So see, and I am sure that every one of us have gone through these notices. It's not, they have not spared anyone. But yes, when these notices come, generally what needs to be seen is, one, is it coming from the right authority? Second, the mandatory fields, which is your the DIN has been generated or not, whether it's been served on time, whether it is being what are the documents which they are requiring on that notices. You need to just carefully go through so that it is not that you do not respond to certain things, because non-responding to certain things would be detrimental to you itself. So when a notice comes, one is a thorough reading of the notice and thorough understanding of what exactly is the need of the notice and whether it is coming from the right authority and it's not time barring for sure. Just have to take that into your mind and then maybe start responding to those notices as and when what details have been required for.
Sure. Noted. I mean, that was nice. Thank you. What is your take on this, Gopi? Would you suggest anything?
Sandip, well said, but a couple of other points, to be considered. See, as an enterprise, when we start the business itself, we know that it is enterprising itself is a kind of, big exercise by itself, right? And business itself has been described as a very big thing. Nothing changes happened, right? So we should not be worried about the notices. First, the panicness of receipt of notice has to just go away. Again, the education is important, right? So education, how it has to happen, because this education doesn't require to be happening at the lower level of across the organization. But we should tell the top level management like CFO or CEO, whomever we are actually reporting to, that if we are into this particular paradigm, there would be a possible notices. First of all, as a tax person, the duty of the tax person is to not to just manage the compliances by filing the returns. It is that what is into VR and what are the different, threats we have. What are the different positions we have taken? How this will culminate tomorrow into the liability, or how it will culminate into demands or notices whatsoever. We must definitely have the complete vision towards that. Once we have that, we should prepare a kind of a simple 3-4 pager, whatever it is, and communicative management. These are all the areas that definitely interpretation issues, tax rate issues, whatsoever the issues are there, we can phrase it to 3-4, use cases and put them into, and I enlighten the management. These are all the different things that can definitely come to us as a notice, no surprise. So they're well prepared. They're well prepared psychologically. Now, when the notice comes in, you don't rush up in the same minute that, hey, I got the notice. Nobody is ready to listen to your negative things in the organization. So once you prepare them psychologically, yes, this is going to happen. Now, when notice is being received, then there's no urgency for you. You can aramse work yourself, because the moment you inform to the management the notice is received, next minute onwards the follow-up happens. One follow-up from CFO, another follow-up from CEO, 4 meetings continuously across, and you can't collect the information what is required. Now, when you psychologically make them understand before receiving the notice that there's a possibility of this, once you receive, you take your own time, work around it. Rather, you can also do one more thing is, when you identify yourself, these are all the possible, scenario where you get notice, prepare yourself. We always look at, assessment readiness program, right? Similarly, litigation possibilities, wherever we have, we should keep things ready, or we should actually figure out what would be the best way to keep things on top, right? That's the important thing to do. Once you do that, I think, as you rightly pointed out, that once the notice is received, the number is there or not, jurisdiction, the time period validity, all these things we check it out, and then, but there must be a reply to the notice provided the DIN is available. irrespective of it is a preliminary notice, 10 available in that, nothing to care about it. But there must be a cooperation by your response. If cooperation is not provided for, there are consequences to it.
Got it. In the maybe taking it from where you guys kind of mentioned, Sandip, various laws have kind of various timelines for maintenance of records, digital form, electronic form, physical form, whatever forms and formats. GST also is one of them. I mean, it has, as long as I litigate, or 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, all that is there. So how, is there any practice that you recommend? See, because the kind of businesses that we are in today, a lot of them, the data is becoming humongous. Whether even in a digital form, it is just too huge to kind of manage and maintain a lot of times. So what is your recommendation to all of us in terms of, how do we go about maintaining the records? Would you recommend physical copy maintenance of what type of records or what kind of documents, something like that, on those lines?
Yeah, so it's a valid question, because obviously the limitation of statute is it's way beyond 5, 6, 7 years, and physical documentation of the records may not be that feasible because again it needs a lot of infrastructure to keep those document. And digitization is something which is something everybody is for, and I believe all the documents should be in a digital format, easily retrievable, and specific rights to specific individual, so that the documents are not available across the organization, because the chances of losing that data would be more larger if it is across the organization. So specific to those. At the same time, as Gopi mentioned in the earlier part of it, that the positions which you have taken while you have done your returns, while you've taken a position on the HSN or the rate, that needs to be properly documented and kept as a repository, so that once that litigation comes after 5 years, you're not rushing behind it or saying, okay, what position that point of time I've taken, no, I'm not sure what position was there, what case law was there, or which precedents we have taken earlier. So that repository needs to be very carefully maintained. And again, that repository can only be in a digital format and cannot be in a physical format. And I think every organization today is also striving towards that all the documents are being kept in a digital format, because it makes life easy for everyone in the organization. And it should not be on the desktop of the individual. It should be on a shared drive so that everybody can have an access towards it.
Okay. Right. But in the same thing, Sandip, you think the department is welcome to kind of electronic form of document maintenance? Because I'm not too sure of the experience of our members on this. Because as a chamber, we've heard cases where members have come back to us saying, no, he still asks for hard copies, print out of ledger accounts, 10,000 invoices that I've issued to my customers, things like that. What is your experience been in terms of whether the government is really, whether the field formations are really accepting the electronic formats?
At least to me, when I have visited them, at least they are receptive about it, okay, on the digital format. But yes, certain people have their own way or style of working, and many people like in a physical format. It's easier to read through or strike through or make notes of it. But if it's a very voluminous data, you can anytime ask the officers to say that, okay, see, it's very voluminous. Printing out the ledger itself will be 10,000 pages. So it is better that I submit in a not in a hard copy, but in a digital format. And I think they are pretty receptive towards it. So I don't see a challenge on that front, at least.
Okay, that's nice. That's nice. Nice to know. Nice to hear that, tax office is also considering the electronic format in many cases.
There's one call out I wanted to make sure. When we maintain electronic data, So there is a possibility that people or the companies maintain metabase. Metabase will always tend to go for a change. Let us say yesterday tax rate was 18%. It has become 28 today onwards. But when you don't keep your records in a PDF format like invoices, and the moment you change the rate to 28%, the previous all invoices of metadata will go for 28.
That's a disaster.
So as a tax manager, we will have to ensure that whatever those invoices, credit notes, debit notes, they must be converted in PDF formats the day zero and be kept in the repository.
But do you think, managing that ERP piece or customizing it is so challenging that the change that I make should only be prospective and really not impact the past of mine?
It is not, but unfortunately, you can't bend the tech guys to do those changes for you. Unfortunately,
But that's a dangerous thing.
how much time we took to make our changes, which we are supposed to do in VAT scenario. We waited the GST coming to go for a change because it's a bandwidth requirement. And today, unfortunately or fortunately, the technology teams are actually driven towards the business requirements, not for the tax requirement. How we are going to coincide our tax requirements and the business requirement is again how part of it, right? But this is a one important aspect is whatever document they're generating it, convert them into PDF day zero and have a repository towards it. Otherwise, it's going to disaster.
So I'll ask you one more question in the same breath as
Yeah.
taking, technology.
Yeah.
Buzzword is AI, ML, predictive analytics, so many other forms of analytics.
Right.
So what is your take in the sense, in what all functions do you really think we can use technology to be more efficient? What is your what has your experience been? More specifically, because the volume of transactions that you deal with is not small.
Yeah.
So where all have you been able to use technology? I'll try and come back to you on the same thing.
See, I'll tell you, fortunately, we have one tech guy. How we structure our department is also very important, right? It is not just to speak about, technology has changed their lives. It is not to speak only about GST is completely technology. How we are adopting technology is important. So every tax function has to have a sub-vertical called technology adoption. Unless we have the technology adoption, sub-vertical, tax vertical, it is impossible to convert your technological efficiencies into reality. So what we have done, at least, we have hired a guy who knows GST, but who is a tech expert in the field. So it's a kind of a combination of both. Now, what happens? We file our returns about 200 returns in a single day without spending any time before the day.
That will be interesting for all of us to know how.
And we never gone to clear tax. We never gone to Signet. We have our own technology. The only thing why we have gone to Signet is to get the APIs done. We don't use their, what is it called? Technology, except technology, the other front end of it, right? We just will latch upon to them for the APIs. All the other functions, we internally do it. Because the entire database is available. The government has given one facility, manual upload facility, right? That's not sufficient for us. But do I need to really go to the interface and then look at it, the clear tax or whatever? We never felt so because the APIs are available. APIs, even cost efficient, they are 10 pies. Each minute, I think it is a 10 pies API. So we just, latch upon to the Signet and then we took over this APIs only for them. And all other activities completely done by us. Let us say, for example, waybill. We know the waybill will expire such and such time, right? We fix it in our algorithms to say that before the expiry of waybill, 1 hour before that, please renew it. It's again information technology only, AI, what we speak about, right? So artificial intelligence can be used in every sub-function of the tax, every sub-function, registrations. The moment there is a suspension of the registration, we get mail. We hardly look at those mails in. But what we do, we run on an everyday basis, morning and evening, what is the status of my GST numbers across the nation? And it comes within a minute, entire result of you good, bad. That's all. Wherever it is bad, we just jump into action. So if at all I have to wait for the mail chain, yes, of course, the government also, but the moment it is suspended, but at the end of the day, you'll come to know about it.
Correct.
But by then, everything would have been into fire. So somebody would have approached you, sir, maybe it is not generated, this problem, that problem, all that, you are panicked. Now, by using this API technology, what we did is all my GSTNs are whitelisted into my system and say which are all the GSTNs. I press a button in the morning and evening every day. Morning I go and evening I leave. I just get a comfort that everything is cool. Chalo. That's how the researchers are concerned about.
Very nice, very nice.
Similarly, for the reconciliations, what we do, again, the API technology over there also. We do the 2B versus the 3B reconciliations. We do the 1 versus the 3B reconciliations in the same manner. We don't require anybody's support except the API's integration. That's all we do. We get the APIs and then we press the button. System, we have made in some interface because we have a technical adoption team available. And this guy does the same job. He manages the entire front ends of that. He press the button. He say that, both are matching. So we don't have to spend any time except the 8 hours time for filing 200 tons today.
Excellent. Excellent. I think that is something definitely that is a takeaway, I would say, in terms of, yes, it's possible.
It's possible. Because I'll tell you what, fortunately, the entire network GST maintains is completely technological.
Correct.
And they have fortunately created APIs for you. It's not that they're hide and seek methodology. They have clearly mentioned what are all the public APIs, what are the private APIs. Go to public API, you pay money, get the API what you want. See, I'll tell you what the ClearTax, what the other, Signet are all doing is they also have the same APIs. Nothing they are getting from heaven. They're all getting from GST network only. They do the sophistication, what we are doing today in house, and they charge us. That's all about it. I agree 2 things that, if it is not our core area, do we actually migrate to the third party and get the reports done? Or do we have that system in place?
Correct.
That's the only difference.
It's a choice.
It's a choice. So what the choice we have chosen about is, let's do it internally. So technology adoption team not only stops over there, it has to go for the assessment readiness program. So in assessment readiness, where we stand, what are all the things I have uploaded as a GSTR1? What are all the 2B records I have in my place? Whether at any time 2B is changing, 2A is changing, whether some people who are not filed returns earlier have been filing it today. All that, happens in a pass of a minute. And we'll get the reports. And then from there, we make an MIS and we study that where we stand today. So it is not actually a rocket science, but there must be somebody who has that bent of mind to understand the technology, build the systems around it.
True. What's your experience been on this?
So Badri, on this, we are also internally, as an organization, are moving more towards AI and ML, and all the functions, not only tax, it's for every other function to adopt that, and that is the future. As even for India, Honorable Prime Minister is saying that digital future is something, digitalization is something which is the future.
True.
And we should be towards it. And yes, for our vendors, we also do something similar where we have an API integration where we run on a daily, or not on a daily basis, but maybe on a weekly basis to understand which suppliers or which vendors the registrations are active or have been inactive, so that we can immediately reach out to them and say, okay, this is the status of yours. How do we get a comfort? Should we look out for some other vendors? So that is how it is. On the other front, what we are also trying to implement is not for India, but for other jurisdictions outside India, where we are trying, because in the other jurisdiction also there are certain requirements to say, okay, in your invoice, there has to be specific items which needs to be reflected. Otherwise, you will not get a credit of that input. So a guy who is a BCom grad who is sitting and posting those entries, he may not be aware of the entire mechanism or what details is required, and each and every invoice he need not go through line by line. So what we are trying to also implement is kind of a optical reader where the PDF invoice has been read by the optical reader and identifies that, okay, out of the 7 mandatory fields which needs to be there, is there any particular field which is missing?
All right.
Yeah, if it is missing, yes, we do not book that invoice. We go back to the vendor, ask them, okay, correct your invoice, get a corrected invoice, and then post it.
All right.
So
That's
that
nice.
we do not lose on any of the credits. So that is something which internally we are also managing it, and we are trying to do it. yes, obviously there is internal tech team through help of them, but obviously wherever required, a third party support is also there.
All right, that's interesting. That's interesting. I mean, very nice to know that there are so many other avenues or opportunities where we can really put technology to use and not just limit it to reconciliations or number related stuff. That's very nice. That's very nice. Thank you so much. Thank you. Maybe we'll just one more before we kind of go to our audience in terms of what they have. Just one thing, maybe we'll close our discussion with that, at least my discussion with on this. To both of you, I'll take it from you first. MIS, it's something which is close to the management, close to everybody, for their thing. So do you believe that there is something which we can call as a tax MIS, which, both of you started the discussion with, I think you said that the role of a tax manager is so and so. So keeping that in mind, this question is to both of you. We'll start with Sandip in terms of what do you suggest I should look at the end of every month, every quarter, whatever that period may be. What are the things that I should really look at to know that, yes, I'm fine. Everything in my tax framework is fine.
See, I think there is not something not called as tax MIS, but yes, this is something which a tax function should look at it, considering that there has to be various recos which needs to be prepared to understand that where is your, again coming back to where is your ITC? Is there any vendor again not filing? Whether you're getting the right credit? Have you followed up? So all those recos needs to be in place so that tomorrow there should not be a last minute surprise, even for you or for the management, to say that, okay, this is the loss for the entire year which I've incurred only because I've not done my tax MIS properly.
Okay.
But I've not done that function properly. So it is very, very much essential to say that, okay, there is a RECO every month which you do, and through that you identify the gaps and then resolve those gaps.
All right, that's nice. That's nice. anything from you, Gopi? You suggest that we
I concur with what Sandip said, and at the same time I have a couple of more points to add. I don't say it is MIS or whatever the nomenclatures they are, but there must be a periodic information to be made available to the tax head by his own team members, where there must be some comfort with drawn, because the day you just wake up, there is a notice coming in today, right? But by just receiving the notice, are you discomfortable? We should not be.
Should not.
So to just to ensure that we are not discomfortable there, we must really have some kind of analysis in our mind that what we are on a monthly basis or a weekly basis, what we are observing is fine. Let us say while my team files the the entire returns of 200 returns per month or whatever it is, I just take this snapshot of that, how it is going directionally for the last 6 months versus today, where we stand, is going up or down. So I have some business sense from my business team members as to what is their AOP, annual operating plan, versus what is made available here, whether synchronizing or not synchronizing, where it is having dips here and there. So we can just get a sense that AOP versus this, how this is going. Whether AOP versus this is going in both the same manner, I'm comfortable. I can handle anything is my comfortable, honest, right? If AOP is speaking something, my target is reached something versus my tax return speaks something else, then I have my own concerns. Yeah, something is wrong. Let's go back and figure out where it's wrong. Either sometimes business might be wrong, vice versa as well, right? So to get that kind of a sense, definitely we must have some information system made available that we are comfortable. So
as he said, it is about reconciliation as far as input tax credits is concerned. Would you guys believe I should put something else also into that MIS, into that report? Definitely input tax, because that's like more like the nervous system of the entire GST scheme.
See, I'll tell you, for input tax purposes, I don't relate to MIS, first of all. What I always make the finance person responsible for this. What do I do with the non-available input tax credit? I can't do much about it. But what I can do is I can make awareness. What we have done is awareness is already been there on the table. Now suspense account is created.
Right.
But it is you to look into it. It's not be looking into it every day. So what is on suspense account? It is that you are paying the money to vendors. It is that you are speaking to business people every day and day,
Correct.
right? That is, you must get me this amount. That follow-up mechanism is very independent of MIS.
Right.
So that is already been part of the integral system of accounting itself.
Right.
So I don't, follow for the, input as credit purposes MIS. But what I look at MIS in a broader perspective is whether my turnovers, what has been displaying versus the AOB plan, versus what targets people have been speaking about across the, company. I have achieved target. This time I missed my target. All these things are in sync with my tax returns or not. That's the perspective I always look at it.
You mean to say monthly revenue recoup?
Absolutely.
True. That's nice. So we'll just do
sure.
the members also, the audience. Any questions from any of you, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask. Anybody, if you can raise your hands, maybe it'll become easier for us to kind of call out names so that there is no overlap. Yes. Purushot, somebody has raised their hand. Who's that? Ravichandar sir. Yes, sir. So Ravichandar is a very active member of our committee. Yes, sir. Sir, you should unmute yourself. Sir, we are not able to hear you. Purushot, should you unmute him? No. Ravichandar sir, you should unmute yourself. Okay, while he comes, while he comes. Sir, if you're not able to unmute, just type out the question in the chat. One of us will read it out. But while he does that, on this predictive analytics rather, there is so much that we can do in terms of, whether this vendor will comply, the predictions, the factors that go into it. I mean, it's a blue ocean.
I would say, a lot of information already available in the system, basic network. What you have to do is you have to consume those APIs. It clearly gives you that, the entire history of the gentleman.
One is the API, surely, Gopi. The other is our own history, rather the history of our own transactions with those vendors or their customers actually reveals so much more it reveals.
So what we have done so far is before onboarding the vendor itself. So we have advised the business teams by giving the access to that. Just analyze his past history. If he's at least having the 4-star, because we have some kind of scoring system. So basis that what we discussed with the team is, if he's a 4-star, please onboard him without any hesitation. Less than 3, please discuss. If it is 3, hold and let us cautiously watch out. If it is urgency, go ahead. If it is 3 or more, not urgency, hold on 3, go on 4 and ahead.
Nice.
If it is less than 3, please do not onboard.
Right.
Unless it's a monopolistic approach.
Right.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
I'm audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. 2 things. One is on the HSN. So in the initial stages, we also faced the problem of HSN. So HSN, I would like to say is the vendor is the best person to judge on the HSN. Still, if you feel the HSN is not correct, then you should have a dialogue with him. In fact, I faced a lot of problems with our customers. I had to call them and explain to them. That is on one point. Second is on input tax credit. So my ex-company, I retired from the company. I was advisor there also, and we implemented actually a SAP-based solution where the payment is the what you call SAP system matches the vendor's invoice with our PO, with our bill booking. If it doesn't match, then only the basic amount is paid. If it doesn't match, or if it is not, the vendor has not filed the return. Sometimes some people pay once in a quarter, file the return once in a quarter. The GST amount is stopped. They pay only the basic amount. In fact, it happened to me when I was a consultant. I used to raise GST bills. I was filing quarterly returns. So my GST is to come after file the return for the 3 months. This, I think, is effectively implemented in Praxair Linde. It takes care of all the GST, what you call
Process question.
purchase book reconciliation with the vendors. And vendors also understand after some time. Then earlier we used to face a lot of problems and we used to communicate, a lot of mismatch, a lot of ITC getting lost. So this is one way I think technology can aid in mitigating this.
Sir, if you are filing the quarterly returns and you are waiting for the company to make the payments of GST only after the quarter, once you submit your the 2A part of it or one part of it, I would suggest rather you can go ahead to give an indemnification letter to them. In future, if I don't file my return, then you can always pull back money from me. I'm indemnifying now itself to you, kind of a thing, to get your payment on a monthly basis. That's one suggestion we can make.
That is okay. That is okay for me because I don't want to disturb the system when something has been done.
Yeah, we can always discuss with the company whether indemnification is actually a possibility for them to accept it. If that's a possible way, I think you should go ahead.
No, because all the people working there were my Sishyas only. They won't
get it.
He's the one who had implemented that system.
Exactly. So let us go and indemnify them so that you can get your full money.
I think BCIC they stopped the what they call GST payment. I think.
Sure. Purshot, one more. Who's the next?
Hi, Tamal here.
Yeah.
I must say this webinar was very effective the way it was being carried out without stressing much on the provisions and sections and sub rules. It was a common man's discussion, and thanks for that to both the guests and to Badri also. One of my questions to Mr. Gopi is, as you were saying, that you were taking only 8 hours to file 200 returns, and literally the matching takes no time. I am also working with a multinational company. What perennially we are observing is that matching is a big problem, particularly 10 to 15% of the overall credit, wherein either the supplier files it incorrectly because suppliers do not file themselves. They have their consultants. Either they misses the #100, and the same is also with the booking team, wherein the invoice numbers are not properly booked. So obviously there has to be a mismatches, and which may be a considerable amount. So how do you tackle this if it is matched automatically and you don't require any time literally to match these things is one of the questions what I'd like to get your reply or input on it.
Yeah, well put in your question. Can I answer it now?
Please, please.
Yeah, so you are right to say that while moving the GRN, if invoice has to be moved for 2 different GRNs, you put star mark or full stop, minus, plus, whatever it is. What we have made actually a programming effort is that if the invoice is appearing multiple times, one appears with a clean number, the other appears to be with the star, minus, plus kind of a thing. Remove all the star, minus, plus and look at the total amount whether it matches with the invoice or not. If that is getting matched, please push it through. That's how the programming is being made. And the entire thing is driven through the AI. By the time we press the button, it automatically goes and manages to download the reports from different sources and match it up with and give us a kind of ultimate stuff which we have to concentrate. It takes half an hour to 1 hour for us to clean this up and then again push back so that it comes with a clean report. Wherever the people are not filing the returns, are independent activity itself.
One of you, you'll be able to read that question for me.
Yeah.
Recent amendment rule 88D.
88D of GST rules. If 3B ITC is more than 2B, monthly notices are issued. Every month a reply needs to be filed. If reply is not filed, GSTR1 cannot be filed. Any thoughts how big companies are planning to handle?
It's a very good point again. Unfortunately, if the spillover happens and then the returns are being filed separately or whatsoever the credit that's appearing in 2B versus what you have availed, definitely there's a difference. But what you have to do, Kash, that's where the tax role is very responsible and important, right? If 2B is saying the X number and our books are speaking about X plus 1 number, you have to only take the 2B number, right? You can't go beyond that. Yes, there will be situations last month invoices would have been received by you this time. Then 2B is because the kind of a constant report or a static report, it doesn't actually facilitate you to take the entire credit because spillover possibilities whatsoever happen. What I would suggest is, first of all, you need to figure out what is the previous month backlog that has come up to you, right? And figure out a solution towards that. How do you want to take this forward? But 2B is a static report. If 2B is speaking about X number, you have to go with X number only for now. If you are taking the X plus number, the notices will come. If we can defend the notices, please take that. You cannot actually leave the credit aside. Please take that X plus 1 number. When the notice comes to you, they don't suspend your registration immediately automatically. There will be notice to you. Respond to the notice. But going forward, what you have to do is, even if your goods are not received, unfortunately, you still can take credit because it's available in 2B if the invoice is not booked, right? But you have to have the proper reconciliations. So this is one of the important concerns the entire industry is facing because spillovers, right? We have the representation to be made to the the government, but at the same time, what currently you have to do is, you please take, if it is eligible more than what is available in 2B, respond to the notice.
I think just correct me on this. I think the question is more from the point of view of, as you said, say in the month of April, there are some invoices which are appearing in my 2B, but I've not yet accounted them.
I
So
tell
I will
you,
not take a
this is
credit,
not the concern.
which is in the subsequent month, I will account that.
Exactly.
And in that month, my 2B is lower than what I'm going to
Absolutely,
pay.
that's the problem. That's what I'm saying. There are two situations over here. One, non-accountability of some invoices of previous month. Second, the fag and the sales by the supplier.
You're right. Month end.
30th में बेच दिया, you received it in second.
Correct.
He has reported this transaction the previous month.
Right.
So as long as you have a credit justification, you should not be, non-reporting them as a credit. You report as a credit. There will be obviously a notice. You have to respond to that.
Sure.
Now, what the government is trying to look out is that you should not overboard your ITC was a primary perspective of the government. Unfortunately, they missed these two situations, which the industry has to go and represent.
Sure. Noted.
But will that have an interplay with the TDS provisions?
Possibly to an extent.
Yeah, because if you have already availed the credit, that means that you have availed the service.
Yeah.
It's only that you have not accounted for in the books, but there is an accrual which will be there in your books.
Yeah.
So TDS says on accrual, there will be a TDS.
Right.
So I think there will be a
So
disconnect.
possibly I would have availed the credit, though I may not have accounted the invoice by that date.
Correct.
I would have accounted the invoices on 5th of the next month. But given that I'm filing the return on 20th, I would have claimed the credit, but TDS is not done.
Now look at the other situation. Section 16 fails here. For example, 30th, they have sold the goods.
No.
You received in
Correct.
second.
Correct.
So Section 16 fails here, but you have no choice.
No, not really. I don't know if that is the question that he's asking, because like you said about the control account, in the SAP framework, we have GRIR.
Right.
So I would have received the goods, but I wouldn't have accounted the invoice yet. So because I've received the goods and it is already appearing in my 2B, I will take the credit.
Agree.
But as he said, the IR part is not done. It could trigger a disconnect with the TDS.
Agree. I'm saying about the second use case.
So, yeah.
Where the goods are sold on 30th or 31st,
No,
received is subsequent.
Those cases, yes, it's a
Section 16
yeah, absolutely.
But still you have no alternate.
Yeah. But that is one thing, that's one risk that I have seen. In many discussions, I've seen that, irrespective of whether I've accounted the invoice, whether I've received the goods or no, because it's appearing in 2B, I take it. So that I kind of avoid a possibility of a notice and a difference in this regard.
Should too.
But that exposes us to TDS, which Sandip is mentioning.
Absolutely.
Next. Manjesh. Manjesh, you have to unmute yourself.
Hi,
Manjesh,
Badri. I'm audible now. Yeah.
Yeah, you are. Tell me.
A couple of points, Badri. This was very informative, and we also have some robust system of availing the input tax credit post validating the GST or 2B report. But given the fact that there are some glitches in this also, because vendor issued an invoice, we have accounted it. It is matching with my 2B. Vendor has made the payment. Vendor has filed the 3B return. All said and done. So the fact is that I can avail the credit now. But again, the eligibility comes into play, because when I see in my, because we are a compliance team and we see only the report. We don't validate each and every invoices physically. When we run the report, when we see the report of purchase register, we get into something like a model number or something like 2A3, nomenclature will be mentioned in the description column. So we are unable to find that. So it takes a lot of efforts for us to pull out the invoices, validate what is that, what the vendor has, or my procurement team has placed on the vendor, and what he has procured, what is the services or goods he has supplied to us. All this comes with a lot of complication. So it's not all at this green and fairy. It comes with a lot of pain. I just want to bring this point. Point number two is that 88D, just a small point. 88D, the restriction of 88D says that the entire tax credit, it does not restrict it to the B2B transactions or vendor customers transaction. It also gives a restrictions on the import transaction, and most of the import transaction are not flowing into my GST or 2B. So how do you see this? Thanks.
Any of you?
So if I were to understand about the first point on the SAP perspective, rather figuring out the eligibility criteria by sitting at the last leg of the organization, it might be prudent for us. So what I can think about, or in the SAP we can manage, is what are all the different items or HSNs as a company we are eligible for the credit has to be redefined or defined first of all at a system level itself. So the tax manager need not go around the pillar to post at the fag end of the filing of the returns as to finalize the eligibility criteria itself. Let us say an AC has been purchased by the company for the residence of the MD. Now the question of eligibility criteria comes then, right? If it is booked in the company's records. So rather we need to figure out at the initial stage itself in a system setup level, which are all the HSNs as a company I am able to take the credit. Their yes, no has to be filled up. Only yes filtered items should be made available to the tax person for taking credit so that you can span and figure out a right solution towards it. That's one. So number two is concerned import transaction, the same thing as I told you again. You have to take the credit, let us take the credit. If the notice comes in again as a 2B versus this, then we have to prove with our defense. That's all about it. Yes, there are use cases. The government has not completely thought through about these situations. Your use case also comes into the same pedal. So ultimately what we have to do is, while we take this credit is excess of 2B, there would be a notice, there's a reply to that. That's where a tax person, we should not worried about notice should not come to us. We should be concerned about whether we have the right defense to make out while the notice comes in. So we should invite the notices so that we can respond to them as well. We have our job secure.
The only thing
Thank
difference
you.
is,
One small addition to this. Sorry, Badri, I'm cutting you.
Yeah.
So just in case of insurance, I gave an example like insurance premium paid to like national insurance company. I know that it is for, I don't know whether it is for a life insurance or if it's an insurance on my debtors. So I'll be the description will be appearing as premium paid. That's all. It comes as a premium paid. So literally, it is a difficult task for us to reach out to the right team to get the invoice, to validate the invoice, and go back again, go to the purchase orders.
I got what to say.
Yeah,
Let me tell you why.
Thanks.
The accountant has to be trained enough to have the change yes/no columns here. It's not only the static yes/no columns. I always say it's dynamic. You fix once for all the yes/no, but keep these fields as dynamic. Now, when accountant is booking, accountant must be educated by tax manager. Hey, these are all my eligibility criteria. These are all the different transactions on which we are eligible for the input tax credit, and on all other things not. Then whenever he is booking the invoice, if everything is saying yes, for example, say he has to have a facility to say no also. So once you are going to make that field as dynamic, then if it is a premium paid for something else, which you feel that it is not eligible for credit, please educate your accountant where he will change this field as no, then it will not flow into the ITC register.
All right. Sure. Purushot, any more questions that anybody has typed or anybody else has raised their hands? Yaar idhar hai? Yaar illa. Maybe we are on time that way. I'll just take 2 more minutes of both of you. Anything that you would like to share as concluding remarks in line with the theme that we have, Sandip?
So, by way of conclusion, maybe what I would like to share is that yes, GST is still evolving. It is not that we have reached the maturity level as we have reached in income tax, but we'll have to keep pace with how the laws have been changing. There are continuous improvement, which even the government is looking at. They're looking at recommendations, yes, but there are certain nuances as it is. We'll have to keep that nuances there. We'll have to go forward with it. But it's a good thing which is coming into play. And by virtue of being more matured, I think we will be able to reach where all of us want to have a hassle-free tax function within the organization.
Very well summarized. Thank you, Sandip. Thank you, Gopi ji.
So I have 3-4 points I really wrote down because I may forget and they're important. Shift in mindset of the top management leadership. The big shift has to happen now, if not done earlier. That compliance is integral part of the company, not the incidental part. That's very important. Number 2, everybody has to accept to take the compliance as their responsibility. And a tax manager responsibility not coming down, but we should be less bureaucratic and more friendly. Some principles we can think about, how you can be associated without any, what I can say, any kind of obligations around it, right? So how you are going to associate with the business, help them out to help you. So that is what we have to figure out as a solution. And there must be a kind of a robust, process around. If we as a tax manager, if I were to say, we should not be thinking around, there is no process, there is no things around it. Probably we may have to initiate to bring those processes because we are responsible to the external agencies who are the extreme authorities to us. And accounting can run with the 70-80% accuracy. Business finance can run 60% accuracy. The tax cannot run the function without 100% accuracy. So with this, how much we have to contribute to the companies, we have to think about and put those processes robust over there to ensure that compliance is not under the toes, and at the same time, educate the people around it and tell the management to shift, have a shift around it. This is what I can think of.
Thank you. I mean, that was a great summary. Thank you. Very big thanks to both of you. I'll put it this way. PVS would always tell me, PVS is a mentor for our committee. He would always tell me saying, Badri, when you're making a presentation, you're getting into a discussion, there should be a takeaway. There should be 2 takeaways for the audience. Trust me, today, I'm not exaggerating. It is not just 2. I think I have written down 8 as takeaways from both of you today. Thank you so much. Just for the benefit, let me just list it down. I think the first thing you mentioned about operating a control account, that definitely is something which each one of us should consider. It's a great thing to kind of reconcile between what is
retain,
what is coming towards us, what we have availed, what we have. That's one thing. Then Sandip, you did mention about the vendor management system. I think coupled with that onboarding system, I think it's a great initiative. It's a great thing to do when we kind of deal with multiple vendors. Definitely. Reply to SCN is mandatory. I think one of you mentioned it is because there is outside there is a different school of thought saying if it's not a valid document, let me not respond. But we forget that there is. If this document is not valid, something else will come to me which is valid. Yeah. So, I mean, more than anything, in good faith to establish bona fides, I think it's a great practice to kind of reply to any correspondence that really comes from the tax office. Reply could be as well say that, look, this is not a valid document, so I'm not going to make my submissions in detail. But a response is a good thing to kind of do. And yes, from both of you, we definitely got to understand that there is more than just numbers, more than just Excel files where we can use technology. Caveat emptor is what I was thinking, but you guys changed it today to make it caveat venditor also, saying, it applies. I mean, it is both sides. As a customer, as a recipient, I think, yeah, that is definitely something which is a takeaway for me also. And you did mention about, the technology adoption team or a member is very important within a tax team. That's something that all of us should consider with size, with complexity, both in the interpretations that we go through today and the implementation of those and getting the data out. No doubt in that. And you did mention about change in mindset.
Yeah.
Compliance is a very important piece.
Integral part.
I think, yeah, it's an integral part. I don't know how people read this, but today the buzzword is ESG. This is part of G.
Yeah.
This is part of G. You cannot really run away from it.
Absolutely.
And yes, the last one. 100% accuracy is something which all of us have to note. You may be 60% in business finance, the numbers that you told,
yeah.
But as far as tax is concerned, that's definitely, that last nail. It's like there is no escape. I mean, compliance with law, as in accuracy as far as the tax function is concerned, there is no escape. There is no shortcut. There is no. Rather, let me put it this way in our language. There is no concept of materiality in tax.
Yeah.
It is binary.
Yep.
It is 0 or 1.
Absolutely.
It's a function. It's a binary function. Thank you so much. Very big thanks to both of you. To having spent this 1.5 hours with us. I'm sure it's beneficial. I think some of them acknowledged while they were talking to us. I'm sure there'll be more people who will acknowledge that. A very big thanks to both of you to have made your time today.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just give me a moment. Yeah. Small memento from BCIC to
Thank you.
Gopi. I'll get one more once. Do something. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.